Not everybody has a high enough credit score or large down payment saved up to purchase a house, but no one wants to rent forever. People who want to own a home without a strong credit history might consider a rent-to-own situation. While rent-to-own is a fairly common practice, it isn't as popular as renting or buying a home. That's probably because many people encounter rent-to-own scams. What is a legitimate rent-to-own deal? It's good to know what a real lease purchase agreement is to help better protect from scams. In a rent-to-own scenario, both parties, the seller and the would-be buyer, agree to let the would-be buyer pay rent and move into the home. What makes this different from a normal landlord situation is that the person living in the home has the option to buy it later, using part of the rent they've paid as a down payment. Non-refundable upfront fees. You as the buyer pay the seller a one-time, usually non-refundable, upfront fee called the option fee, option money, or option consideration. This fee is what gives you the option to buy the house by some date in the future. The option fee is often negotiable as there's no standard rate. Still, the fee typically ranges between 1% and 5% of the purchase price. Lease option. It's important to note that there are different types of rent-to-own contracts. Lease option contracts give you the right, but not the obligation, to buy the home when the lease expires. If you decide not to buy the property at the end of the lease, the option simply expires, and you can walk away without any obligation to continue paying rent or to buy. To have the option to buy without the obligation to buy needs a lease option contract. Lease purchase. If you have a lease purchase contract, you may be legally obligated to buy the property when the lease expires. This can be a problem, especially if you aren't able to get a mortgage. Watch out for lease purchase contracts. You could be legally obligated to buy the home at the end of the lease, whether you can afford to or not. Because legalese can be challenging to decipher, it's always a good idea to review the contract with a qualified real estate attorney before signing anything, so you know your rights and exactly what you're getting into. Agreeing on the purchase price. Rent-to-own agreements should be specific on when and how the home's purchase price is determined. Sometimes, you and the seller agree on a purchase price when the contract is signed. Other times, the price is determined when the lease expires, based on the property's then current market value. Applying rent to the principal. The rent is usually slightly higher than the going rate for the area to make up for the rent credit you receive. In some contracts, all or some of the option money you must pay can be applied to the eventual purchase price at closing. Rent-to-own home maintenance. Depending on the terms of the contract, you may be responsible for maintaining the property and paying for repairs. The maintenance and repair requirements should be clearly stated in the contract. Maintaining the property, such as mowing the lawn and raking the leaves, is very different from replacing a damaged roof or bringing the electrical work up to code. Buying the property. What happens when the contract ends depends partly on the type of agreement you sign. If you have a lease option contract and want to buy the property, you'll need a mortgage to pay the seller in full. If you decide not to buy the house, or are unable to get financing by the end of the lease term, the option expires and you move out of the home, just as if you were renting any other property. You'll probably forfeit any money paid up to that point, including the option money and any rent credit earned, but you won't have to continue renting or buy the home. Obviously, a transaction like this, while legitimate, can open the door to a lot of unscrupulous deals. What kinds of rent-to-own scams are there? There is a wide spectrum of scams and scam artists using rent-to-own as a lure. One search site dedicated to rent-to-own hunting, rentownlabs.com, says the program often attracts inexperienced, first-time would-be buyers. Because of this, there are many rent-to-own scam artists out there hoping to lure naive renters into their trap, says a Federal Trade Commission spokesperson. It can be difficult to identify them since the industry isn't subject to much inspection. The FTC says renters sometimes discover the supposed seller doesn't actually own the property, or they didn't pay their property taxes and there's a lien on the home. Other tricks include offering rent-to-own homes in such poor condition that they could never be sold in the traditional way, with possible issues relating to leak piping or asbestos. There have also been instances where the owner has promised to carry out repairs before a rent-to-own contract is signed, but then reneged on the repairs. Scammers can target unsuspecting people who have a dream of owning their own home in a variety of ways. One couple lost their home and their money because the company they did business with kept the rent they paid each month instead of using it for the mortgage debt. When the original lender didn't receive the money, the home went into foreclosure. Be skeptical. In some scams, the homeowner overinflates the value of the home. Without an appraisal, the buyer pays more than the home is worth or makes a larger down payment than needed. Another way renters can be tricked is by not reading the fine print. Missing a payment by a day or two can trigger an eviction after months, or even years, of paying down payment money. You can lose all the down payment money you've paid. Another popular scam is for a renter to give a large down payment to the person they believe is the homeowner. They then find out the person never owned the property after the money is gone. Worse, some renters have found the house they were hoping to own is in foreclosure and can't be sold to them. Rent-to-own scammers might list a property for a lot more than its market value to lure you into paying more for less. Some scammers, though, will list the price for much lower than its market value. The second group includes those who want to get social security numbers for identity theft. The idea is to tempt you to grab a good deal before it gets away. In the process, you give out vital personal information. Another red flag is asking you to fill out an application before seeing the property. This is something scammers do when they are trying to get your personal information. Poor communication skills. If you are communicating with a potential landlord through email for a rent to own, look out for poor grammar and numerous typographical errors in the communications. This is a sign you are not dealing with a professional. No photos. Rent to own ads without photos can indicate the property isn't legitimate. Always ask for photos of the property to make sure it's real before going to see the house or giving any information. Above all, remember that your realtor should be there to aid in your home buying process, not just to show you rent-to-own listings. Helping you avoid the wrong time to buy, the wrong location, or the wrong house for your budget can all go a long way in making sure that you're happy with the end result. Beyond that, realtors aren't all the same, and you will need to find one that gels with your interests as a home buyer before choosing to go the length of the field with them. Click the link in the description for more info on rent-to-own homes and programs.